This last Pokemon Day, the Pokemon Company announced a new game still in development that may just be the solution to everyone's problems. Every year on Pokemon Day, the Pokemon Company releases new information on the upcoming games. And considering that it had been a whole year since we last had any new information on Pokemon Legends ZA since it was announced last Pokemon Day, everyone was excited to finally get an update. But little did we know, a completely new and separate game that is currently still in development would be the one to steal the spotlight. Enter Pokémon Champions, a new battle-focused game where you can experience everything that you love about Pokémon battles all in one place. Move over, Pokémon Showdown, because it looks like you have some competition. Now, at the moment, we don't have much information to go off of, but from what we can discern from the trailer and the information on their new webpage, the game appears to function similarly to the aforementioned Pokémon Showdown, or even the classic Pokémon Stadium games, giving players a place where they would be able to engage in competitive battles outside of the mainline games. What's more is it looks like they'll be taking some inspiration from the Masters 8 tournament, and players would be able to utilize whichever gimmick of their choosing during said battles, which was showcased in the trailer as we see a terrestrialized Dondozo engaging in battle with a Mega Evolved Charizard. Now, if that wasn't enough to get you hyped, I don't know what is. But aside from all of the bells and whistles, they mentioned that there will be crossplay between mobile players and Nintendo Switch players, making the game much more accessible to those who may not be able to afford a Switch, as well as Pokemon Home connectivity, allowing you to bring your old Pokemon partners with you into the new game, similar to how you were able to bring your Pokemon from the original Game Boy games into Pokemon Stadium instead of using rental teams. Okay, we get it. The game sounds cool, but why exactly do I think that this is going to solve everyone's problems? And what exactly are everyone's problems? Well, speaking of problems, one problem that you might have is not seeing my content, which you can easily fix by hitting those super effective like and subscribe buttons. That way, you never miss a new video, and I can see that you like these kinds of videos so that I can keep making more of them. But currently, the Pokemon community is divided into two camps. Well, generally speaking, of course. More casual players who play the game from a single-player standpoint who seem to think that the games are lacking, and competitive players who play the game from a multiplayer or gimmick standpoint who are waiting to see how the next game will shake up the meta. And this is where I believe most of the problems arise. Currently, these two types of gameplay must be accounted for in one game. And oftentimes, in order to ensure that the competitive aspect of the game stays balanced, the single-player experience oftentimes seems to be a tad neglected, at least in the eyes of the general Pokemon community. This feeling of wanting more was especially showcased during the same Pokemon Presents, when we also got a new trailer for Pokemon Legends ZA, with some players looking forward to the new mechanic and the return of Megas, while others seem to think that the game was taking a step back from the previous Legends title, Pokemon Legends Arceus. Now, at first, I can admit I was a tad bit frustrated with the other half of the community, as I myself thought that the game looked a lot more entertaining than the previous Legends title, since this game seemed to be more battle-focused, whereas the previous Legends title, Pokemon Legends Arceus, was more story and exploration-focused. But that was until I saw a video of a non-competitive Pokemon player voicing their opinions as to why they were unsatisfied with the new trailer. And then it finally clicked for me. We want different things. So I took the liberty of asking those in the community that have been upset or disappointed by the modern Pokemon games what they wanted to see from the games moving forward. And overall, they seem to all agree on a few points. They wanted a game with updated graphics to make it look like a more modern game that focuses on the campaign storyline and less on the next gimmick like terrestrialization, megas, etc. They'd also like to keep the open world concept that was introduced during Pokemon Legends Arceus, and of course they'd like for the game to run smoothly. All very reasonable things. But notice how none of these wants are directly related to PvP battling. From a single player standpoint, players want a story-based RPG, and from a competitive standpoint, players want new gimmicks, powerful Pokemon, etc. to be able to use during battle. battles. And putting all of these wants into one game is what I believe is leading the community to feel like the games are falling short, as it can be hard to balance both sides. So the problem essentially boils down to wanting different things. It's not you, it's me, I swear. But how is Pokemon Champions gonna fix all of this? The answer lies in Pokemon Legends Arceus. Diana, what? Didn't you just say that Pokemon Champions was a solution? Yes, hold on, I'm getting there. I have a point. Just follow along with me for a second. Pokemon Legends Arceus is widely considered the best modern Pokemon game to date. Their words, not mine personally, it wasn't for me, and this actually comes into play with my point later, but I'm getting ahead of myself. But one big difference between Pokemon Legends Arceus and, say, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet is that there's actually no PvP in Pokemon Legends Arceus, which is the literal reason that I didn't really like it. But this meant that they could focus on the storyline, the world building, the environment, new catching mechanics, etc. versus a game like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, where they also tried to include a lot of those aspects, but also had to squeeze in a new gimmick, new Pokemon, ways to make your Pokemon more competitively viable, etc., leading to what felt like a more shallow game in comparison to Pokemon Legends Arceus, at least from a single-player standpoint. So, where does Pokemon Champions come into play? With the introduction of a game that focuses exclusively on competitive battling, this could actually allow the Pokemon Company and Game Freak to completely remove PvP, in the competitive sense at least, from the mainline games, giving them the opportunity to make more single-player focused games like Legends Arceus, while also allowing them to improve the PvP portion of the game separately. I know this feels like a breakup, but sometimes it is in each party's best interest to keep things separate. And I believe that if they were to go in this direction, that it would greatly improve the health of the community and the game franchise as a whole. Competitive Pokemon has recently exploded in popularity. I mean, we just had another record-breaking turnout at EUIC, making the demand for an ever-improving PvP experience just as imperative as single players getting a great gaming experience as well, balancing the meta, getting new patches, implementing new regulations, new gimmicks, etc. would be much easier done in a separate game rather than in a much larger, more fleshed out mainline game. This way, they could focus on giving people the best single-player experience without having to worry how it would affect PvP. Now, obviously, this is all speculation, as, like I mentioned earlier, we really don't have much information to go off of right now. But I believe that if this is the direction that they end up going in, we may finally get to a place where both sides of the Pokemon community are finally happy.